Today's generation, I'm looking out in the crowd to see how many, we don't have not too many people under 25 out here today, but today's generation, I'm sure that a lot of you have been to the movies lately. But they're used to the super widescreen, mega mall, warehouse style movie theaters. Newport on the Levee, Florence, Wilder now, the old Showcase Cinemas in Erlanger. Most of you have been to these places. You walk in to a lobby that's 3 times the size of this room. You buy your tickets, you get a few snacks. If you're lucky and you're on a date, you might get change back from your $50 bill as opposed to the, well, 25 cents, 50 cents. Most people in here can remember $1 or $2. If you can remember back before $1, let me know. But contrary to what the younger generation might think, it didn't always used to be that way. The fact is that Northern Kentucky was once filled with individual neighborhood theaters, wonderful theaters. Many of them were magnificent in design, seating 2,500 people up to, elaborately decorated, and most of them were filled to capacity during their long histories. Most of them were charging, as I said, 50 cents or a quarter at the beginning of their histories. Rather than a trip to the suburbs and these huge mega mall theaters, people would just walk in their own neighborhood. Kids could ride their bike, park right out in front. Usually didn't have to chain the bikes up back then either, I suppose. But almost every neighborhood had their own theater. Some had several to choose from. And so popular were these theaters that most of them didn't even advertise. Everyone in the neighborhood just knew where they were. They knew what the hours were. They knew what movies were playing. They didn't have to read the newspaper. And they certainly didn't have to go online to try to find what movie was playing. The movie theaters today, it seems that most of them play the same movie for several weeks in a row. And back then, in the good old days, the movie would typically change every week. So it really was the place to be for a lot of us. And I'm sure a lot of you remember, have some fond memories of going to these local theaters. Some of today's movie houses, never mind. Also, comparing today and in past, today if you go to a movie, you're typically going to sit through sometimes 6 or 7 or 8 previews, which previews they showed back then, but not as much as they do today. Usually 15 minutes, it seems like that you're watching previews. Back then, I'm sure a lot of people here remember the newsreels. That's typically how it would start off. From 1929 to about 1967, each theater was given a newsreel. It came out twice a week. And a good number of adults were kept up to date on local events and national events, world events, based on those newsreels. Who can tell me what followed the newsreels back in the good old days? The cartoons, the absolute. I'm glad you remember those. I thought it was just me that enjoyed those. But Keystone Cops, Our Gang, the Three Stooges were, I guess, among the favorites for the males. I don't know what the girls, but later on, Bugs Bunny and Roadrunner. But you know, I think in a lot of cases, the cartoons were better than the movies. So, but I think that's something really missing today is a good feature cartoon instead of 10 previews. These movie theaters were the perfect place to forget about one's daily headaches. The adults, the kids didn't have as many, but the adults would spend a good number of weekends there. After the invention or the introduction of air conditioning, it was certainly the place to be in the hot summer days. There were several theaters that made that part of their biggest advertisement in the newspapers was the fact that they had air conditioning, and they wanted to make sure that you knew that. So that was so you'd go to their theater instead of someone else's. A lot of generations in Northern Kentucky grew up with these wonderful theaters, seeing their first Walt Disney movie, and then growing up themselves and enjoying their first romantic date at the same cinemas that their parents grew up with, along with a box of buttered popcorn and Milk Duds and Raisinets, whatever your favorite might have been. Mine was Raisinets, and a nice cold beverage. As a little special treat today, I've got some nice buttered popcorn we'll have afterwards. So can't have a talk on theaters without buttered popcorn.